everybody, and welcome back to the channel. My name's Amanda N, and as promised, this is part 2 about a haunted house that I worked in. This is almost completely unscripted, so I apologize if I go off on a little bit of a tangent, but I just wanted to talk about what haunted house I worked at, the good, the bad, the in-between, so we're just gonna get right into it. I'm gonna call this haunted house the Warehouse. It was in a city, not totally in the middle of nowhere, but this city is surrounded by mostly towns. It would get very busy during the Halloween season, and I started auditioning for this haunted house in September. So how the audition process for this specific warehouse worked was you would go in, fill out your forms, whatever it was, and then we would all be told to either act like zombies or give our best scream, just things of that nature. It's pretty basic. The people working there, any age, it could be 17 all the way until 60. Most of the people were around my age, which was in my early 20s at the time. So this was just kind of a part-time for fun job. The warehouse, it did flood quite a few times. So there were some delays in opening, to say the very least. There was one night where it actually flooded when there were people still in it. That was interesting. Maybe they thought it was just all part of the experience, but anyway, once I got the job, I am a pretty good screamer, if I do say so myself. Once I got the job, the first step is your makeup. Then after that, you go up to the haunted house itself. You might get a small break, like a little 15-minute break, or maybe at most a little half-hour break if you were on a really long shift. But shifts weren't really more than 4 or 5 hours, so I'm pretty sure legally they didn't have to give us much of a break. But anyway, for my makeup, I was made to look like a doll that had my mouth ripped off. That was pretty much the makeup I stuck with. Some people would change and do different things, but I always wanted that makeup because I actually have really sensitive eyes, so I didn't want eye makeup if I could avoid it, so I constantly took that look. Like, no, I want the mouth ripped off look, you know, what a look. Anyway, so that was my look. And this warehouse was 3 floors with a ton of different rooms. This is one of the biggest haunted houses in the country. Hopefully, if I say that, you guys won't know which one it is, but it's one of the biggest. And the first floor was all stuff like pretty classic, you know, the cells and the hospital and that black hallway that's really narrow and feels like it's suffocating you, a sort of neon clown room, you know, what you'd expect to see in a haunted house. The second floor was pretty similar, again, very classic haunted house stuff, and eventually it got more and more creative as it went. There would be rooms that were almost empty with just a few weird things scattered about. It was really creative, you know. To whoever designed it, they did a really good job. The rooms that I was mostly in, there were 3 rooms, and they were all very close to each other, and that was sort of my spot. And you could change spots, but this was the one that I liked best, and it was the one where I worked best because I am pretty small, and I look a little bit younger than I am, so I fit in really well with the doll room. So I always looked like a porcelain doll. I had my hair in pigtails, and I had a dress that was spattered in blood. You could use the costumes that they provided, but they smelled really disgusting, so I opted not to do that, and I just got my own dress from like Goodwill or something and, you know, ruined it with blood. So whoever donated that, sorry about that, probably not what you were expecting, but nonetheless. Anyway, I had a dress spattered with blood, and I would be in the doll room. I would sing little nursery rhymes. I would go, "Come play with me," in a creepy little sing-song voice. I would sit so still that people thought I was a mannequin, and then I would scare them. The other area, that doll room led into a funeral parlor room. So I would sit there. Sometimes I'd have a partner there, and I'd pretend like they were dead and jumping out of the coffin, and we would be a little bit more aggressive in that room. When you're out in the open and it's obvious you're not a mannequin, or it's obvious you're not trying to do a jump scare, you're supposed to be a little bit more aggressive and creepy, getting up in their face, but of course, never touching them. That was a very, very strict rule. You cannot touch the guests. So we were very, very careful about that. And then the other one was the Coffin Hallway, which is still in my nightmares to this day. I mean, as the name suggests, it was a hallway with coffins, and it was really, really dark. There were just a few little flickering lights above each coffin. Fake skeletons would be in some of them would just be empty, and I would usually hide in one of the coffins and then pop out, pretty straightforward. How the haunted house system worked is, if you don't know, there are hallways behind just about every single room. So behind one of the coffins, maybe if you moved it just a little bit, there'd be a door there, or there'd be curtains, and you don't really recognize this when you're going through the haunted house, but that's how people follow you. That's how you listen in for people's names, and then they follow you throughout the hallways. So I'm sure that's not news to any of you that know haunted houses, but that's how we get our information and how somebody can scare you again later. So if you show that you're really afraid of this one clown, you bet they're gonna pop up again later. They're gonna find their way through a hallway and spook you out later. I wouldn't utilize the hallways too much. I was pretty stationary. There are people that are set to move around the haunted house, but nah, I was not one of them. I didn't want to. It can still be a very confusing layout, and when it's in the dark like that, it can be really hard to see. I'm pretty clumsy, so I just chose to kind of be a stationary doll, but it worked out. I'm small, I'm good at fitting into coffins, and I was good at sitting and just kind of balancing on a chest for a little while and singing those creepy songs. So I was good with that. That was pretty much my set job, and I really liked that. But as for why I will never work in a haunted house again, one thing that I don't think gets talked about a lot is the fact that there's sexual assault in every industry, and I know this probably isn't what you guys were expecting, but sexual assault in a haunted house is the most terrifying experience ever. The frustrating thing is that worker safety is not always taken all that seriously. And it was taken fairly seriously at the warehouse. I really respect the heck out of the people that work there. I don't want to say that all the employees were bad or anything of that nature, but there were times where, when I was working in the Coffin Hallway, there was this one fellow employee who I'll just call John, and John was at least twice my age, pretty tall, pretty muscular, because he's security. He patrolled. He was not stationary. He was kind of both a scarer and security. He'd been there long enough that he could escort someone out if they were getting rough with any of the members, which rarely happened, but there was somebody who punched an actor or kicked an actor out of fear, and they had to get removed, and so John would kind of handle that. My issue with John is that when I was in the Coffin Hallway, he would often stand in front of me doing that classic, guy leaning up against a locker in front of you, pinning you down kind of move. I'm sure that a lot of the women here, any women listening, might know what I'm talking about. But he would kind of lean up in front of me and get really close to ask, do you need water? Do you need a snack or something? Because we could kind of hide that in our coffin pretty well. So he would offer me that, and I would say no, but he would just linger there and make me really uncomfortable. And eventually it got pushier and pushier until he was saying, "Oh, you know, you're really cute. Do you have a boyfriend? Let's go out for a drink after this. And I said no to the drink offer. Saying no, no thank you, I'm not comfortable with that. And yeah, it just kept getting worse until he would put his hand on my shoulder or my hip and kind of be using that as an excuse to lean in and talk to me as if he's trying to be friendly, but I was not interpreting it as friendly. It did not feel friendly. It was pretty upsetting, actually. And I waited until the spoopy season was over. It took me until November to kind of work up the courage to tell somebody about this. And when I told the owners of the warehouse, we did have access to, you know, the higher ups, because it was a relatively small operation. Even though there were a lot of people there, I would still call it a small business because it was very community oriented. But I told the owners and they said, you know, we take that seriously, that's not good, we'll talk to him. But what's frustrating is that because the Coffin Hallway is so dark, their surveillance was useless and it didn't have audio. So they can't see what he was doing to me because it was too dark, and they can't hear it because the video cameras don't have audio. So the fact that this haunted house, where they care about worker safety, didn't have surveillance cameras that could operate in the dark, because a lot of this haunted house is in the dark, yeah, it was just upsetting for me, and I loved everything else about it. I really did love everyone there, and I kind of wanted to work in a haunted house again after that because it was so much fun. But that one guy just kind of turned me off to the experience, because I know that if something like that is to happen again, unless I have night vision security cameras, I can't be assured of my own safety. And I know that that is not at all an uncommon thing. I'm not saying that other workplaces don't have that, but yeah, that just really upset me, and I kind of just wanted to tell a little story time about it because it's such a shame. I'd love to work in a haunted house again, but that whole experience really turned me off to it. Let me know if you guys have ever had any weird jobs before, if there's any jobs that you just won't take. I'm curious to hear your thoughts down below. But anyway, that's just a little story time. I know this is something very different than what I do, but truth be told, I've still been a little bit sick, so I thought just going off script and talking on my channel for a little while would be fun, and here we are. I hope you liked this video, as different as it was, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye!